Bam, 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 bam. Mr. Stevie's tall toy toys. Here's my Starbird. I picked this up from a Belgian chap, so it's a French package. Got that in 2003, I believe, and look how clean and white, crystal white it is. Beautiful. I got it in the box, came unassembled, didn't even have any stickers on it. I've assembled it and put stickers on. So let's assemble it for you now. So we start off with the engine block, which snaps into the rear. It's always a bit fiddly, yeah, a little bit fiddly I found as a kid. Whack that in. And then we start building up the rest with the bag of bits. So first out the bag is going to be these interceptors, which are really smart little sort of fighters that slot on the wings to actually give it like a vertical kind of a design, which I really liked. Even as a kid, I thought, oh, that's cool how when you slot them in sort of sideways, they kind of change the profile of the ship. Just thought it was really smart. Then we get in, we grab this little ball here. There we go, we're going to make the gun turret. And it looks nothing like the Death Star at all. There wasn't another popular space property at the time, 1978. And that slots into there. And that rotates around. But you need something to go in that little hole there, that tiny little hole. And yes, of course I got it. The elusive turret gun, which I think with the Cloud Car Pilot little microphone is easily lost. I remember that being lost all the time as a kid, but luckily I got it. You can see how it comes out very quickly, and it's got a tiny little post there, so very easy to lose. And I know a lot of Starbirds that you find on the third-hand market now miss the gun, but not this one. The instructions are really smart. This Starbird was actually designed by an MB designer called Bing McCoy, who also had the honor of designing ROM Space Knight back in the day as well. So thank you, Bing, for all of this. The stickers you can see I've already applied. This sticker is actually really cool. I love this. It's a shame it's hidden away. It's like a view of the cockpit, like a reflection of the alien planet. Actually, I've got a couple of stickers I haven't applied. Well, let's rectify that, shall we? So let's take all this apart, and I've just realized by looking at my instruction book, because I never look at instruction books, that the stickers go on the inside cockpit as well as the wings, the back of the wings. So we'll just align that nice and neatly and straight. And I'll put it on the other side as well. But, well, you know how that goes. Let's put it on. Not quite straight. Well, these are very low-tack stickers, so easy to move around. And then that's all complete. Gaze upon the wonder that is Starbird. This piece of machinery kept me occupied for hours and hours and hours. It truly was revolutionary. The main reason is, you're going to have to put your fingers in your ears because this is loud. And as a parent now, I understand how annoying this must have been. But as a 8-year-old, I was like, this is the best thing ever. So inside, we had what's called a jiggle switch, an early predecessor to accelerometer, which you've all got on your phones. So when I lift this up, there's a little ball that runs down and makes a connection. And it gives a climbing sound. And then when I tip downwards and the ball rolls to the other end, makes another connection, you get a downward deceleration sound. And then, of course, you've got the all-magical wonderful, wonderful noise. I'm really sorry, Mum, for those hours and hours where I just annoyed the hell out of you back in the day. I now understand, but it is kind of brilliant. Apart from the incredible noise, Starbird also had a multitude of different modes. And this was its main ship mode. And on the back here, you had these cool little interceptors, which kind of broke off and you could fly around as sort of separate little interceptors. So they were really cool. I used to be able to fight those. I used to go off and battle my Star Wars figures and things like that. Then you had this little gun turret, which I found out today. I didn't really play like this, but you can actually remove. I'm going to put it on there. Imagine that's the ground, and you can make like a little base encampment. That was useful for when you had little figures, and when we get to the command base, we'll show you some of those. So you had this little gun turret that could be a little placement, which was cool. But the main feature was this sort of escape pod where this whole front piece could kind of detach. I'm going to break that down, and you could have that as a sort of a command ship, a sort of command front end escape hatch. I don't know what you want to call it. So you can, if you listen, you can hear that jiggle switch, that little ball I was talking about, which makes the noise. Obviously, you need some power, so you take that engine out the back, slot it on there, and now you've got a little escape hatch. And then even if you wanted to, I thought of everything, you can take this front piece off, and you've really got like a scaled down little kind of a escape pod with that really cool sticker as it comes into land. So the kid could decide whether it was escape pods, whether it was a landing craft, you're landing on the planet. I was blown away. I never really discovered Transformers. This is the nearest thing I got, but this did me brilliantly. So it all snaps back together. This one's always a little bit tricky. Well, see, that's how you lose the gun, you see. This little thing, as I said, you can lose that super easy. So careful with that. Slot your interceptors back on. And then you're ready to fly to the next galaxy. Back in 1978, when MB released Starbird, it didn't have a blockbuster movie to back it up with, but that didn't stop MB, creating a great toy and leaning into the more sort of scientific feature set of it rather than the story behind it. And here we have its original TV commercial.
Starbird, a product of space age technology created by MB Electronics.
Stand by for final test.
Starbird sensors trigger microcircuitry to generate the matching sounds of climbing.
Level off. Descend. Fire laser guns. That does it. Thank you.
Starbird from MB Electronics. Give your child a look at tomorrow today. Command base and launching pad sold separately.
So let's take a look at that sold separately command base. Also came out in 1978, was this huge fiberboard structure that you could build to create a command base for your Starbird, and came with a number of features. Let's check them out. Anti-invasion laser guns. Set the turret lasers into the corners of the tower cap. Mount the anti-invasion laser guns into the two of the bases, and you can rotate them to return enemy fire. Real working crane and hoist. Fit the working crane and hoist into any of the 4 turret bases. Pick up the transport vehicle and swing it into the maintenance tunnel. Transport vehicle. You'll have lots of fun with the transport vehicle. It has 4 rolling wheels and a special carrier unit designed to hold the laser guns, Starbird's escape pod, its power thruster, or interceptors. Interceptor landing deck. Starbird's interceptors sweep into the control tower's special landing deck. Rush them over to the main landing platform on the transport vehicle using the multi-purpose carrier. So there we have the great offerings for 19... Sorry, get back to normal. Oh, that's better. So there we have the 2 great offerings from MB in 1978, Starbird and its command base. But in 1979, MB introduced a new version of Starbird. Introducing Starbird Avenger. As you can see from these 2 box fronts, the obvious difference is new stickers and decals. There is also a darker canopy on the front cockpit. But the most important difference between Avenger and regular Starbird was the feature set. Like its predecessor, Avenger still retained the realistic engine sounds that went up and down as you moved the vehicle. It still had the photon red lights and the annoying sound. But the main difference and improvement in this version was that it used IR technology, where it would fire a IR beam to hit targets, and the Starbird itself would know whether it was successful in hitting that target. Let's talk a little bit more about how that works. So you will notice that at the front of the Starbird, you still retain the 2 red LEDs that light up and flash with the photon sounds. But you'll notice that there are 2 other bulbs, effectively either side, one to the right and one to the left. The one on the right, which is the lighter color, is the IR beam transmitter. This transmits an IR beam out. And then the other one, which is a darker shade to kind of help with interference that IR often has with natural lighting. So that's why it's usually a darker plastic. That is the IR receiver. So effectively what happens is Starbird sends out an IR beam, which is invisible to the human eye. It bounces off a reflective surface, in this case the target, and bounces back, and Starbird picks that returning IR beam back, knowing that it's reflected off the thing it's meant to, and therefore signaling that success, you've hit the target. But the best part about this IR feature is for play. You can now take two ships and fire invisible IR beams at each other. And if my ship fires an IR beam anywhere near your IR receiver area on the front of your ship will know that it's been hit by an IR beam and activate a defeat sound, and therefore I have won. Essentially, it's kind of an early days laser tag. One interesting aspect of Starbird Avenger, which took place either in late 1979 or more probably in early 1980, was a name change. They went from Starbird Avenger to Starbird Space Avenger. I tried to do some digging to find out a categorical answer on the reason why, and I couldn't really find it, but one could surmise that a certain other galactic property that was out and about in those times, Star Wars, was a good enough reason for MB to smartly differentiate themselves, because it wasn't a Star Wars license and they had the word Starbird in there, so they prefixed Avenger with Space Avenger. The incredible IR battling play pattern that MB had created with Starbird Avenger was loved by kids, and all they wanted to do was battle each other, but they were good guys battling good guys, Avenger versus Avenger. So MB Starbird needed a bad guy, and that was introduced in 1979 or early 1980s. Again, my dates are a little bit fuzzy on this, but I would say 1979. I'll tell you why in a minute. We introduced Starbird Intruder. This smaller vehicle was essentially the front cockpit molded in black plastic with a new rear piece that could slot cleverly into the neck piece of the cockpit. It came with the same 4 bulbs that you see on the Avenger, with the 2 flashing photon lights and then the IR transmitter and receiver. And smartly they created, because it was a little bit shorter and stubbier, they created almost a handle at the back, so you could hold it almost like a blaster. The wings folded up and down as well, but this basically allowed the Avenger to battle against the Intruder, good guys versus bad guys. Now, like the Avenger, there are 2 packaging versions, one with and one without space, which would lead me to believe that the Intruder and the Avenger both came out in 1979, with a change of name and packaging design in 1980, adding space to both the Avenger and the Intruder. The differences between the 1979 and the 1980 versions of the Avenger and Intruder were not just limited to the prefix word space on the packaging. If you look closely, you will notice that the 79 versions came with a much squarer, very reflective target, and the 1980 prefix space came with a very different design, much more sort of folded up and a little bit more kind of techie looking. And then we have the Starbird line. Super small, super tight, Starbird, Command Base, Avenger and Intruder. Really, really incredibly innovative. It was one of my favorite toys, and I know a lot of people loved it. But that isn't quite the end of the story there. During my research for this episode, I discovered that MB actually partnered with Bandai Japan to create a Japanese version of Starbird. And while the Bandai version retained the iconic Starbird jiggle switch, accelerometer up and down, sound effects and flashing red lights, it didn't have the IR feature. It didn't have the modularity where you could break it apart and put different pieces into different areas. But instead, it added more sculpting, more parts, more see-through plastic parts, gave it a very Japanese look and feel of the time. It also opted for fold-in and out wheels underneath, so you could actually kind of make a landing gear, and included projectile firing. Also, the Japanese Bandai Starbird was available in 2 color schemes, the red and the white one seen here, and then a more grey, silver and black version. Date-wise, I'm, again, a little bit hazy on this. I have a feeling that this was done in 1980 after the success of the Starbird line from 78 and 79. I don't know whether it was 80 or whether it's 79, but clearly I feel that Bandai chose not to do the IR battling feature. But if any of you know any more information about this, then please let me know, because I'd love to get my hands on one of these, but by all accounts they're quite rare. Now this toy probably holds one of my most influential stories of my childhood that I've taken on into adulthood and passed along to my kids as well. The story goes like this. I was about, I think 7, 8, something like that. And I was on holiday with my mum and dad in Aldeburgh, which is on the East Anglian coast. And we were staying in a little cottage, and we went to this craft fair. And in this little craft fair, it was like a store. There was little trinkets, little silly little things. And I saw this football boot keyring, little soccer boot keyring that I really liked, and I didn't have any money. So I decided to steal it as a little boy. I just put it in my pocket, walked out, said nothing to nobody. And when we got home from holiday, we got back to the restaurant, Lob Lollies, Thorpe Soken, you know that one. My dad kind of approached me and he said, Did you buy anything, get anything when we were away at that little craft shop at all? And I said, no, Daddy, no. And I went upstairs and I felt really guilty. So I went downstairs, and this is where you should never over-egg a lie. I said, oh, Daddy, yeah, I did. I found some money. I had I had like 5p or something in my pocket, and I bought this little soccer boot. Look, isn't it great? And I remember my dad's face. He just looked at me and he said, you stole that, didn't you? No. Stephen, did you steal that? And I looked guilty, and I eventually had to own up and said, yeah, I did, Daddy, I'm sorry. And he went, get upstairs. So I went up to my bedroom, my dad came in, and he looked like he was going to explode, and I don't know what he was going to do. And he said, go and get your Starbird. He said, go and get your Starbird. So I went and got my Starbird, and I gave it to him. And he looked at it, and he said, you do not steal. Number one, you're going to write back to the owner of that store, and you're going to apologize and send the boot back with the money. And he says, and as for this, you will never see this ever again. And he slammed it on the ground and stood on it and broke it and bust it. And he said to me, now pick that up, go and put it in the bin, and never ever let me catch you stealing again, because every time you steal, you will lose something you love. And I was in like floods of tears, and I took it up and put it in the bin, and I hated him for a few days. And then as I grew up, I realized, wow, by taking something, you have to lose something. And Starbird was one of my prized toys. Years later, when I could get a load of money, and I managed to buy this for like £200 off eBay when I was like 30, I think. And my dad was living down the road. It's like 25 years later. I remember knocking on his front door. I had this around my back, and I knocked on the door, and my dad goes, "Hiya, Tink." He used to call me Tink. And I said, "Hey, Dad, got something. I've learnt my lesson, so can I have this back now?" And he just looked at me and went, "Oh, you little bugger." So thank you, Dad, for that lesson. And I've passed that on to my kids. I think they've all got stories about me taking something or smashing something or making them throw something away when they've done something very, very bad. And it's a good lesson. What you take, you have to give. Anyway, lesson over. So there we have it. Hope you enjoyed the shorter and sharper Mr. Stevie 18's Tall Toy Tales on Starbird. I love doing this. I found out so much. I didn't know that much about it other than what I played with, but to find out who designed it and how they improved the features and how they had to rename it and all that kind of stuff was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I hope you did too. If you have a Starbird, well done. Welcome to the club. Fantastic. If you haven't, go out and find one. The thrill is in the hunt, right? I just hope you'll find one as clean as mine. But until then, have a good weekend. Bum, 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 that's your lot, so bugger off home.